So it's a very good initiative, and congratulations to all your next gen team. GST, of course, GST is the biggest burning issue. And I think on this platform, I would like to thank Shailesh Bhai, because whatever we have achieved in GST, of course, the major credit goes to Shailesh Bhai, cause for Shailesh Bhai from each and every one, because the Shailesh Bhai, whatever knowledge he has got, and the way he has studied the law, whenever I had troubled him so much in the year 2007, I don't know, should not be remembering it, as blunt much more than me. To be very honest, I am blunt, I think, but Shailesh Bhai is much more blunt than me. So that's why it was easier for us to explain to all the joint secretaries or secretary GSTN or revenue secretary. Wherever we went, he explained it, everybody very passionately, and he spoke to the point with all sections. See, when we speak, we don't know the section, but he knew the sections. And one thing which was very, very good, what Nirmala Sitharaman or then Arun Jaitley sir, as well as Narendra Modi has told in their speech that there won't be any additional tax. Matlab, this is just a transition period from VAT and service tax to GST. And actually we calculated them and showed them that there is a lot of difference. And I don't mind putting here, Piyush Goyal sir has taken one session, open session in Mumbai, Sahyadri. So I told him कि GST ने तो हमारी डेवलपर की और रियल एस्टेट इंडस्ट्री की रीढ़ की हड्डी तोड़ डाली है. हालांकि when we tell कि बिल्डर की रीढ़ की हड्डी तोड़ डाली है तो काफी लोग खुश हो जाते हैं, लेकिन अल्टीमेटली तो हम लोग मकान हम ही लोग बना के देते हैं सब लोगों को. अगर आज आप देखो महाराष्ट्र में या किधर भी कोई भी स्टेट में जाओ, more than 80% houses are built by private developers. So I would not take much of your time, and I welcome each and everyone on this webinar. I know it's becoming interesting, and now I think practically every Saturday morning people will start waiting for it. Over to you, Ashok sir. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Rajan. Thank you, Vishal, Garishma, Taraji, Kirtibhai, Dharmesh, Maulik. Maulik has been very instrumental in taking the lead as far as this webinar is concerned. Friends, as you know, that NAREDCO has been very religiously, consistently stretching their arm to all the members. We have over 5,500 members, and not only our members, but also the other developers of other associations also who are affiliated have been taking benefit of these knowledge series. And I think this is the best way of sharing knowledge and gaining knowledge. Without much ado, Shailesh Bhai, as you know that we developers are going through a lot of pain due to the pandemic and various issues of GST. We are all awaiting you to enlighten us, and especially my urge is that if you can throw a little more light on redevelopment, because Mumbai, most of Mumbai, more than 52% of Mumbai is in redevelopment, and we need to understand and we need your insights on redevelopment, as well as section 17(5)(d), what can be done to get the input tax credit on commercial properties is really, really very painful. With these words, I now request Shailesh Bhai, or I request Grishma, in fact, Sabla, to take over from me. Thank you, Shailesh Bhai. Thank you, everybody.
Garishma, you're on mute. Garishma,
Okay.
you're on mute.
Yeah. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Knowledge Series. It's my pleasure to introduce Mr. Shailesh Sheth. He has over 30 years of experience in the consulting and advisory and litigation practices in field of indirect taxations, indirect tax laws, including central excise, service tax, customs, state VAT laws, CST, and GST. He's also a partner in one of the partners in the legal firm, namely RSV Legal, having its base in Chennai, Bangalore, and Mumbai. Mr. Raghuraman from Bangalore, Mr. Vaithishwaram from Chennai, and Mr. Sailesh Sheth from Mumbai. They are all a part of the same team. This firm specializes in indirect taxations, direct taxations, international taxations, arbitration, corporate law, drafting and vetting of commercial contracts, amongst other fields. Some of the issues that Mr. Sailesh Sheth is going to take today are really, really burning for the real estate industry. I'm sure a lot of us are already facing this heat, and he'll be throwing more light on that. So to name a few, there is a tax liability on the joint development agreement, redevelopment agreement, then the free of cost area that we allot to our existing members. To a great surprise, even self-redevelopment attracts taxes. Tax on the post-occupation sale of units. How do you calculate that? And to a great surprise, corpus fund, maintenance, shifting charges, that all that we pay also attracts taxes. I would now like Mr. Sailesh Sheth to throw more light on some of these topics that he's going to take up today, which will also continue in the next session, which is on the coming Saturday. Over to you, sir.
Garishma, before Sailesh said, I think Tara ma'am wants to speak for a minute, because
sure,
she liked it. She liked it that young generation is coming up, so she wants to speak for a minute.
Sure.
Over to you, Tara ma'am.
Good morning, guys. This is really a pleasure because I'm seeing so much of enthusiasm where the youngsters are concerned. As the saying goes, you guys are the future of our country, future of the industry. I'm glad because this knowledge series is something which is so important, because many times we all think we know kya sunne ka hai, but it's only when you hear experts talk, you realize how much you don't know. So this is a learning process. I've been in this industry since 83. I'm nearing 70, but I'm still learning. The day I think we all stop learning, we are going to stop living. So thank you, guys. Thank you from the bottom of my heart to have all this. And I'm sure some subjects will be a little dry, but I expect and I want all the participants to attend all the series that are going to be organized, because there is so much to learn. All the best, guys, and thank you for this patient hearing.
Thank you, Tara
ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Over to you, Shailesh bhai. Shailesh bhai, you are not audible. Yeah.
No, he's audible. I think he's setting up his screen for sharing.
Yes. First slide, second slide. Second slide.
Sir, we cannot see the screen. We can see you, but we are not able to see the share screen.
Okay. Is it okay now?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We can see now.
Okay. Yeah. Good morning, friends, and the Ashok ji, Rajan ji, Dharmesh bhai, Grishma, Abhijit ji, and other office bearers. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to share my thoughts on the real burning problems affecting the real estate sector. And it appears that the sector has been in the midst of this, the fire for now decades. And if one would have hoped that in GST, probably this will be the thing of the past, unfortunately, those hopes appear to have been belied. We have the time constraint, we will be, carrying on these sessions in 2 installments rather. I'll be overall speaking on about 9 to 10 major issues, which have now become the most burning issues with a lot of legal and financial implications, because these are all involving the major disputes on which the demands are being, issued left and right and across the country, not only in Mumbai or in Maharashtra. So without going into the technicalities of the notification number 3 by 2019, we are not into the close by close analysis. I will take it for granted that by now all the players all the stakeholders and players in the sector are well aware of the broad contours of notification number 3 by 2019, by which the new tax structure has been put into place for the real estate sector. I will refer to it only when it is absolutely necessary. Ideally, I would have also gone into detail slightly into the service tax, because it appears now that the GST has really taken over from where the service tax has left. And it is only a continuing journey full of roadblocks, full of stumbling blocks, and full of potholes. So again, the time could be the constraint. Abhijit, I presume that I can continue for about 1.5 hours or 1 hour 15 minutes or so.
Sir, I guess let's keep it 1 hour 10-15 minutes, so that we'll have a couple of question answer session also.
Shailesh sir, you can keep it for 1 hour, then people will ask questions, because people have tremendous questions to ask.
No, I understand.
Yeah.
You see what
and more than 1.5 hours, nobody has that much patience.
No.
तभी तक लोगों को भूख लगनी चालू हो जाती है.
We have started bit late also, and what I'll do is, because I wouldn't like to test the people's patience as well. This is the topic on which probably I can go for non-stop 24 hours. So that's why only thing is that the questions which we would be, I am dividing my talks into 2 parts. Today I will mainly taking up the fundamentals of the notification, plus the taxability of the development rights, landowner and the developer arrangement. These are the topics which I would cover. In the next session, I would cover redevelopment, self-redevelopment by the societies, SRA projects, MADA projects, and other connected issues with that. The questions, whichever questions are there, whatever we can take up today, I would expect the participants not to get into the technical or the facts-based questions, whichever I can answer. Otherwise, what questions I cannot attend to today, I'll see that I can attend it on the next Saturday. And the last thing which I would like to say is, it is indeed, I feel so much pleased and privileged to be here today, because this happens to be my 101st seminar on GST since April 2017. I addressed my 100th seminar last Sunday for taxmen on appeals and SOCOS notice under GST. This is my 101st seminar on GST after April 17. So I really feel pleased to be, privileged to be with the NAREDCO. Friend, if I have to sum up the taxation story and the woes and the pains of the taxpayer and provide him any consolation, then this, my very favorite quote from Hugh McLennan says it all. He says it all, and probably we can take a lot of consolation from this and then move ahead in the life. Man is a thinking animal, a talking animal, a tool-making animal, a building animal, a political animal, a fantasizing animal, but in the twilight of civilization, he is chiefly a tax-paying animal. So that really sums up the story of the taxpayers. As far as the indirect taxation story of real estate sector started, it really started with the state's efforts to tax the goods portion in the indivisible contracts involving the construction, execution of an indivisible construction, like the construction contracts. We are all aware of this. State's efforts failed in Gannon-Dunkerley, then followed by a second Gannon-Dunkerley as well. And this led to the concept of the deemed sale being introduced through 46th Amendment of 1982, with the insertion of clause 29A of Article 2366. We are well aware of this because we have faced enough music on this scope and the implications of this deemed sale concept in the VAT arena also, and even under service tax also. I'm only referring to this because even with the 101st constitutional amendment by which GST has been introduced in the country, Article 366(29) has been retained. The deemed sale, the clause has been retained. It has not been omitted from the constitution. So this is a very interesting thing, which probably as we go ahead, we will take it forward. These are certain important observations of the Supreme Court in this, all these scintillating and significant judgments, which continue to be relevant, even in the context of the issues which we will be discussing. Builders Association, Gannon Dunkerley, MCHI appeal, as I understand, is still pending before the Supreme Court. Then again, the Larsen and Toubro. This is one of the most significant judgments, which will have lot to play a role in the GST ongoing controversy. For instance, one of the major observations which the Supreme Court made in L&T case is that if agreement is entered into after the flat or unit is already constructed, then there would be no works contract, and as there was no purchaser when the building was under construction. And therefore, the last observation, which I put it into the last bullet, works contract would be from the stage of entering into contract. The value addition made to the goods transferred after the agreement is entered into with the flat purchaser can only be made chargeable to tax by state government. This is a very, very significant observation that the taxability of a works contract, and construction contract is nothing but a works contract, would commence only after the purchaser is actually found and an agreement is entered into. How far this will be relevant into the GST is going to be another very, very interesting aspect which is to be taken into account. Coming to certain issues which have been arising under service tax, I have just summarized them, and these are all the issues. Levy of tax on sale of under construction, the very constitutional validity of the levy of sale under construction flat. As you know, in Larsen and Toubro, Supreme Court said that prior to 2007, when the works contract was introduced to section 65, 105ZZZA, the existing entries of commercial construction and residential construction did not cover the works contract. It covered only the services. And as a matter of fact, this is something which we have been fighting for years and years. Between 2004 and 2007, the sector which has contributed crores and crores of rupees by way of service tax on the commercial construction and residential construction involving the works contract was never really payable. It was never payable, which ultimately after almost a decade, Supreme Court held in Larsen and Toubro. In the case of, there have been few parties, few sector players who have been even lucky enough to get the refund on this count in last couple of years also.
Shailesh bhai.
Yes. I'm just going ahead.
Shailesh bhai.
Yeah.
Shailesh bhai, one second.
Yeah, please tell me.
My request is that you switch on your.
What do I do?
You switch on your video, switch off your video because your internet connection, because we can't hear you clearly. If you switch off your video, it would be clear.
Acha, okay. Switch on my video. I have actually switched on everything. From my side, everything is switched on.
Sir, switch off your video so
Acha.
that lagging will not be there.
Okay.
Yes,
Fine.
yes.
Okay.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Now, since during our deliberations on the topics which I intend to cover, we will be required to refer to the constitutional framework very quickly. Only couple of the articles of the Constitution which have been introduced to 101st Amendment. The foremost is 246A. Notwithstanding anything contained in Articles 246 and 254, Parliament and subject to clause 2, the legislature of every state have power to make laws with respect to goods and services tax imposed by the union or by such tax. This is basically the source, the mother source of the powers to levy the GST, make the laws to impose the GST, CGST Act, IGST Act, and State GST Act draw their power from this. 269A, this is the charging article. Goods and services tax on supplies in the course of interstate trade or commerce shall be levied and collected by the government of India, and such tax shall be apportioned between the union and the states in the manner. The definition of, coming to definition article, goods and services tax means any tax on supply of goods or services or both. Please mark the word. It is a tax on supply of goods or services or both. And I will stop there. 26A, services means anything other than goods. This is a deemed cell. 7th schedule, which was amended, as you know, that the legislative powers and the taxation powers, India being a federal polity, have been very clearly constitutionally divided between the union and the states. And these are represented through, these are contained in union list, which is known as list 1 of the 7th schedule. List 2 is the state list, where the states have got exclusive powers, and there is a concurrent list as well, list 3. And again, this listing after the post GST and the constitutional framework concerning GST, this demarcation of the powers, amendments in the relevant articles are also going to be crucial and are going to play a major role in the coming days on deciding certain disputes. For instance, list 2 state list, the entry 18, the land, so the powers of legislative powers relating to to make the laws relating to land continue to be vested in state list. Taxes on lands and buildings, taxation powers relating to lands and buildings, to impose the tax on the lands and buildings, continue to be vested through entry clause 49 of the state list with the states only. These are again extremely significant aspects which we have to keep it in mind. With this background, I will not take you to these definitions. And friends, this has been very hurriedly prepared, but once my second session is over, I have already talked to the office bearers and I have told them that I will be fine tuning it in another week or so, and then it can also be shared with all the participants, or at least the members of the NAREDCO and other connected bodies also. I will be sharing this complete presentation, and the schedule 2. Again, this has undergone very interesting amendment also recently through the Finance Act 2021. This is schedule 3. For our purpose, this is the main entry, which is again, we will be visiting and revisiting time and again. This was the structure prior to 31/3/2019. When we switched over to GST from 1/7/2017, the benefit of ITC continued to be made available, and as per the government's claims, on a much wider scale to the real estate sector also. And this actually, set the ball rolling for the department to start tapping the sector under the anti-profiteering provisions. It is again another story that really there was so much of benefit through the ITC, or so-called expanded scope of the ITC, which was made available to the real estate sector. Sector should know it better. I have my own reservations from the day one that the so-called benefit of the ITC on a much larger scale was really a myth. It was really an illusion, and therefore the anti-profiteering action which have been in some stray cases could be justified, but otherwise it was really absolutely arbitrary and unjustified action on part of the authorities, merely on the ground that we have now provided you a lot of ITC and the benefit has not been passed on to the customer. Was there really so much of benefit at all? Again, a moot question. However, pursuant to the GST Council meeting and 34th and 35th GST Council meeting, when the new tax structure was proposed, these are certain assumptions, as I would put it, based on which the new tax structure was introduced. That we would like to make the house affordable to all the common men at a very fair price. However, when the ITC has been taken away from the sector, albeit with the 1% and 5% of the rate of tax, but still, is it really, a beneficial move? Will it not impact the cost, the denial of ITC, besides creating the lot of distortions? That is one aspect. The second presumption or wish list was protection of the buyer's interest and non-passing of ITC to become a non-issue. Has it really become so? Profiteering by all and sundry. So it has been really this particular objective to introduce the new tax structure has been that the sector, all the players on the sectors are resorting to profiteering and they are not passing of the ITC benefit in any case to the customers, and therefore why to allow them to take that benefit and have the best of both the world. This is exactly, I'm sorry if I'm putting certain things very straightforward, but as I see this sector is now at such a juncture that they will have to decide about their future course of action with pragmatism, with a practicality, and beyond that, with a complete clarity and boldness. Otherwise, the things are really going to be extremely messy in the coming days. On the GST front, at least, if everybody thinks that they have seen enough in last 4 years, believe me, the real fun has not even started yet. The real fun is going to be there in the coming days. Just wait. So, mitigation of the cash flow problem by exempting the developed land, is it really the cash flow problem, or was it really a law problem? Because the problem was assumed and the solution has been actually provided to a problem which is never actually existing, because nobody wanted to take it from the legal perspective. The other objective or so-called wish list or presumption, better pricing due to removal of unutilized ITC at the end of the project. What about the cost? ITC represents the payment, ITC represents the tax charged by the supplier, and the recipient player, actually the sector player, is paying him in the case. Any unutilized ITC at the end of the day is nothing but representing the blocked working capital. And it would still remain the cost unless and until the value addition principle via taxing the value addition via ITC benefit is implemented in list. And simple tax structure and tax compliance. Had it been simple tax structure, friends, after 2 years, I would not be before you speaking for taking nearly more than 3-4 hours of yours and speaking at this webinar, if this tax structure perceived to be simple, if it had been earlier. So, I mean, you are the better judge whether it has been a simple tax structure or not. This is all known to all of you. So I will just slightly fast forward all these things. These are the salient features which I have summarized of the new taxation structure from 1/4/2019. We now come to the center point of our discussion today. Let me first take the first issue. For once again, just to repeat, I will just tell you the topics which I intend to cover in these 2 sessions, just for the participants' understanding. Obviously, constitutional validity of the new notification, then whether concessional rate of tax of 1% and 5% is mandatorily to be applied. What are the GST implications under the JDA arrangement vis-a-vis for the landowner and the developer? Then taxability of supply or transfer of development rights or FSI. GST implication in case of the redevelopment, whether society redevelopment, SRA scheme, MADA scheme, MMRDA rental housing project scheme, or self-redevelopment. Taxability of the contribution to corpus fund, compensation, etc. in case of redevelopment. Implications of the sale of units pre-CC, post-CC on the ITC or exemption to FSI. GST and valuation related issue. And constitutionality of the inclusion of the 1/3, the notional 1/3 land value deduction which has been provided, how far it is constitutionally valid, and implications of the inclusion of sale of land and sale of building, plus the non-availability of the ITC in case of construction of the commercial complex meant for renting, taxability in case of free supply, the supply or sale of the plotted land or the developed plots, and finally the maintenance charges which are being paid. Basically, it flows from the under construction contracts. These are certain issues. These are the overall issue I intend to cover. Now, let me, out of this, I'm trying to move in a chronology. Let us now see the first section, 3/2019. When this notification issued, this is not an independent notification. Please, friends, keep it in mind. This is an amending notification. The original notification remains 11/2017 city rate. 11/2017 notification has been amended by this notification, and all the entire amendments and other followed up notifications number 4, 5, 6, and 7, they all pertain to real estate sector. So the major amendments have been made to introduce the new scheme of the taxation for the real estate sector via this notification and amending 11/2017. If you carefully see 3/2019, the preamble in the opening part, it starts with, in exercise of the powers conferred under section 9134, section 11(1), section 15(5), section 16(1), and section 148, the government, on recommendation of the GST Council, being in the public interest so to do, hereby makes the following amendments in parent notification number 11/2017. This is how the preamble or the opening part of the notification goes. This is a very curious way of issuing a notification, which frankly, at least I have never come across either in excise or in service tax or even in GST, even customs as well, where a notification is being issued by exploiting simultaneously the powers or assumed powers under the certain specific provisions. This is a sort of a hybrid mixture of the provisions, and whether this is valid, this is the first and foremost issue which we need to answer. And this issue has now really, I mean, I have always considered this issue from the day one. I have explained it time and again, and it is high time that this aspect is actually, seriously looked at. Section 9(1) is the charging provision. It only empowers the central government to fix the tariff rate, not exceeding 20%, because 20% is the limit CGST, 20% SGST. Again, so altogether, the GST rate on any goods or services cannot go beyond 40%. This is the mandate. So, and section 9(1)(b)(3), every taxation law has a charging provision, which is known as a levy and collection of the tax or levy or collection of the duty. This charging provision, under this, central government on the recommendation of the council can prescribe the tariff rate. If you carefully see, I have given the text of the section in the earlier part of this presentation, but I'm not referring to it. Section 9(1), subsection 1 clearly says that the central government may notify, and in that case, the tariff rate, there is no provision under section 9(1) that such prescription of the tariff rate can be with the conditions. Government is not empowered, nor the council can really recommend the prescription of the tariff rate with conditions. They have to simply prescribe the tariff rate. This tariff rate is the maximum tariff rate at the material time, so long as it remains operative. Suppose the tariff rate is prescribed as 18%, then the tax on that particular supply cannot go beyond 18%. If the tariff rate is prescribed at 12%, it cannot go beyond 12%. If it is 5%, it cannot go beyond 5%. Now, in that case, how do we read the notification? 3/2019, prescribing the concessional rate of 1% and 5% along with the conditions is, whether can it be said that it is issued under section 9(1)? Because 9(1) constitutionally, legally cannot be resorted to by the government to prescribe tariff rate with conditions. So what do I read? What is the relevance of section 9(1)? Do I read only 1% and 5%? Ignoring the conditions? Can I do that? This is the first question. Section 934, 9.3 is relating to the reverse charge. 9.4 is relating to the reverse charge for the specified class of persons and who are buying from the unregistered persons. And this provision of subsection 9.4 of section 9 has been for the first time amended. You know that supplies procured from unregistered person has been a boiling issue right from the day one. Ultimately, that provision was kept under suspended animation for more than 2 years. And finally, the subsection 4 was substituted by another subsection whereby the central government has been empowered to notify the class of supplies or class of person who will only be liable to pay tax under reverse charge when buying anything from the unregistered person. And unfortunately, but interestingly, real estate sector is the only sector which have been dropped in within the scope of new subsection 4 of section 9, whereby any buying from the unregistered person, the liability is shifted to the player in the sector, to the builder developer. The second part is section 11.1. Section 11 deals with the exemption from payment of tax. Such exemption can be partial, such exemption can be full. It can be absolute or it can be conditional. Now, one person, and obviously any exemption notification, the powers exist under all the taxation laws whereby the exemption can be provided with or without conditions. So, but the exemption can follow only after the tariff rate is prescribed. Can there be only conditions without the rate? What we have to really understand here is, am I supposed to read 3/2019 in a manner that 1% and 5% is the tariff rate and the conditions are prescribed under section 11? Though the no concessional rate is prescribed. Concessional rate is not under section 11. It is in the nature of the tariff rate under section 9. So I read 1 and 5 as a tariff rate and conditions under section 11. Is this what the government wants us to really read? Appears to be so, and this is absolutely unconstitutional. Coming to section 15.5. Section 15.5, section 15 deals with the valuation provision. It is a valuation, only one single comprehensive valuation provision of the CGST Act. And under subsection 5, it only empowers the central government to prescribe the manner for the determination of the value of the notified supplies. Prescribe. The word prescribed has been defined to mean prescribed by the rules, not prescribed by the notification. Can the powers under section 15.5, for that matter, any other section, can be resorted to by the central government to prescribe something by notification? Because prescribed word has always been defined, and under CGST Act also it has been defined to mean prescribed is prescribed by rules and not by the notification. Then what is the relevance of 15.5 then? Then section 16.1. 16.1 basically is the most important provision of the entire CGST Act, because it says every registered person shall be entitled to avail the input tax credit on the inward supplies of goods or services or both, which are procured by him and to be used or intended to be used for the furtherance or in the course of business. This is basically the fountainhead of the entire ITC provision, whereby the credit benefit is being extended to the registered person on all his supplies meant for the business purpose, on which the outward tax he will be paying on the taxable supplies. If you see subsection 1, there is not even a provision for the central government to issue any notification under subsection 1. That provision does not, it only says subject to such safeguards, conditions or restrictions as may be prescribed. And this prescribed, not as may be notified, as may be prescribed. And prescribed means prescribed by rules and not by the notification. And therefore, section 16.1 does not even empower the government to issue any notification. How can 3/2019 be issued in exercise of the powers conferred under section 16.1? And coming to the last part, section 148. Section 148, as we shall see, it empowers the central government to notify a special class of persons, registered persons, for the purpose and special procedure in relation to them for the payment of tax, furnishing of return, registration and administration of such persons. It is basically an enabling provision, purely administrative in nature, considering the exigencies of the situation and the nature of supplies and the class of the people. Central government may notify that they have to follow certain special procedure for the payment, like composition scheme or like for the quarterly returns. They can notify that. Section 148, what is the relevance of the Section 148? With this statutory background and the scope of each and every provision which have been exploited for issue of 3/2019, one has to see, we come to the question that on what count the government has been, it is being claimed that 1% and 5% are mandatorily to be applied, and it is not an option to the player in the market after 1/4/2019, except for the ongoing project, to opt for any other rate. This can be done only if the tariff rate is prescribed. Tariff rate cannot be varied by the taxpayer on his own. However, as we have seen today, is it possible to say 1% and 5% tariff rate? No. Basically, this is an absolutely arbitrary and illegal method of issue of the notification. Ideally, there should be a separate notification for the tariff rate, and then it should be followed by another separate notification for the concessional rate or the total exemption with or without condition. This is the scheme which has been followed and has stood the test of the time for the decades and custom, excise and service tax. Here it is all shortcut, and this shortcut has actually made a mockery of the entire statutory scheme of the thing. One can't have this type of hybrid structure in the matter of issue of such a serious notification with the wider ramifications and implications. And therefore, the question here is what is the significance of this mandatory, this claim? Because if you see the FAQ clearly says that there is no option available to pay the tax at any other rate, but only at the 1% and 5% on the new project. And therefore, one has to see that, can I say so? If you see, friends, section 11, there is an explanation. And that explanation says, if there is an absolute unconditional exemption, total exemption, then one cannot forgo it. 1% and 5% cannot be treated as a tariff rate, whatever may be the contention of the revenue. If it is a concessional rate provided, assuming its validity, it is coming out with a lot of conditions. The moment it is a conditional, then option lies with the taxpayer to whether to follow that concessional rate and conditions or not. This law has been well settled in a catena of judicial pronouncements. And in fact, section 11 does not bind even the taxpayer, real estate player, builder, developer to stick to 1% and 5%. Another thing is, what would be the consequences if the conditions are not fulfilled by me? There is no answer to this. On this count also, this particular notification does not stand the scrutiny of the law. If there are conditions provided in the rule, provision or notification, and if those conditions are not fulfilled, then in that case also one has to see that what will be the consequences. And those consequences are not forthcoming. And in this thing, the other important development here, and this is where again, this is another important aspect of this 3/2019. Taking from where I am very clearly of the view that 1% and 5% cannot be treated as a mandatory notification, whose validity itself is highly questionable, very constitutionally, whether the notification itself is valid or not. In my opinion, it is not valid notification at all. The whole notification is basically unconstitutional. Under that circumstances, assuming the validity, it cannot be said that 1% and 5% is mandatory. Then what is the under which heading and what rate I can pay? Because works contract related entry item number 2 has been deleted. Whether this is an intentional or oversight, that debate is going on in the North Block. One can only assume. But what are the implications? If you see the new item, the original items 3 to 9 covers composite supply of works contract. If you see subsection 119 of section 2 definition, works contract includes construction. All construction contracts are works contract. They are included in the definition of the works contract. With the omission of the entry relating to works contract, item number 2 by 3/2019 notification, does it mean that the SSE or the builder will be required to pay the tax on the total value of the construction, including value of land, because the works contract related entry has been omitted. If this is the intention of the government, again, this is absolutely illegal and this is not permissible in law. Another aspect about, if you go further, composite supply of works contract is covered under clause 5A, and this 5A covers only the contractors for the affordable residential apartment, new or ongoing, for which option to pay tax at the old rate has not been exercised. So now, what is the scope of this? A builder engages a contractor for the construction of a complex. If this complex houses only affordable residential apartments, then it will be covered by composite supply of works contract, and contractor will be entitled to charge 12%. If he is actually constructing the commercial complex, then he will be required to charge 18%. So the scope of composite supply of works contract has been restricted only to the affordable residential apartment in case of the contractor. And now, and with the option at item number 2 being omitted, works contract entry being omitted, whether the fallout can be that one has to pay the GST, which GST is payable only on the service component for the residential project other than affordable housing. No such similar option has been given. It is kept only for the residential project with the efforts only for affordable housing. In my opinion, going by the ratio of the principle laid down by the Supreme Court in L&T case, all the construction agreement entered into by builders or developers with end customers are nothing but the works contract. The works contract definition itself says so, whether it is affordable housing, it is non-affordable housing, whether it is commercial construction, all are works contract. And therefore, the omission of the entry cannot mean that the benefit or the scope of the works contract can be completely nullified by the government. So if 1% or 5% is not mandatory, and in my opinion, it cannot be considered as mandatory, then I can fall upon the residual entry under construction service, because that residual entry excludes all the new entries which have been inserted in the notification by 3/2019. All the new entries prescribing 1%, 5%, RREP, REP, etc. And therefore, it is permissible for the builder developer to go into the residual entry relating to the construction service, because if this is not permitted, works contract definition would become redundant, and which is not permissible in law. Having said that, what would be the implication? Suppose after 1/4/2019, a developer has launched a project of residential construction, and if he doesn't want to go for 1%, 5% where ITC is not allowed, does he have any option? In my opinion, yes. What is the option? He can go under residual entry of construction service. Then what will be the implications? The implications will be, in that case, he will be entitled to claim the ITC on goods and services, and he will be entitled, he can claim the complete deduction of the actual value of the land, which is actually, the undivided share in the land, which is a part of that unit which is being sold under construction to the buyer, on which he is paying the tax. Then question will be asked, if that is so, buyer will not agree, buyer will not pay 18%. No issue. This is basically facts to facts. One has to really do the serious deliberation and the back of the envelope cost computation and everything. I am putting out only the legal position. I am not getting into the practical implementation or the financial aspect of that. That will vary from case to case. The legal position is this, to reiterate, apart from the very questionable validity of the notification as a whole is concerned, 1% and 5% is not a mandatorily can be applied. Government cannot really say so it is mandatorily to be applied. Then under which entry I can fall? I can fall under section the residual entry. I can pay actually 18%. I can claim ITC, and I can claim as a builder actual deduction of the land, actual value of the land, maybe as per the ready reckoner. How do I charge the buyer? It is permissible for me to charge the buyer 5%. Suppose it is non-affordable, but I can deposit the tax of 18%. the difference of 13%, which I would be paying as a on paper from my pocket, this is where the on other side, the benefit of ITC and the deduction of the actual value of the land will become crucial. And here the computation aspect, one has to be consider this aspect in this line only. It is permissible to charge buyer only 5% so long as the builder or developer decides to pay 18% to the government. This is possible, and this is the legal position in my opinion. With this, we come to the other aspect of this 1/3 valuation land. As you know, the Schedule 2, this has been going on right from the service tax days, 1/2006 notification, followed by the service tax negative list notification continued with the same, and 67% was effectively exempted, and 1/3 was only subjected to the tax. Here, the value of land is deemed to be 1/3 of the total amount, and this is as per the provisions of the Schedule 2 under construction service, para 5B. It says so. What happens if my value of land is more than 33%, which is almost a fact in 100 out of 100 cases in a city like Mumbai, where the land is a scarce commodity, where the land forms the major cost to the extent of about, depending upon the location and depending upon the area, for almost 50 to 70% of the total cost. Then, because only 1/3 is being allowed by way of a deduction and the rest is being subjected to the tax, can it be not said that the value of the land over and above 1/3 is being subjected to the tax, because that gets included in the taxable value of the under construction flat on which the builder is paying the tax? The answer is yes. And here one has to see the legislative competence of the union to levy tax on immovable property. One has to see Article 246A. Article 246A, which I referred to, which is basically the mother source. It allows, the constitutional framework allows the union to levy the tax GST only on the supply of goods or services or both. Neither directly nor indirectly the immobile property can be subjected to the tax. The moment beyond 1/3, the value of the land is actually included in my value of the taxable supply, my taxable value, indirectly the land value is being subjected to the GST, whether 1% or 5%. This is unconstitutional because Article 246A does not allow the union to do so. Why? Because the powers to tax, provide for the tax on the land or buildings, prescribe, impose any tax on the land and building continues to be vested in the state via list 2 entry 49. This is one issue. And in fact, the validity of this notional deduction of 1/3 of the value has recently been challenged before the Gujarat High Court in Munjal Manish Bhai Bhatt case. On 27 January, High Court has passed the interim directions. Matter petition has been admitted, and any recovery beyond 1/3 value has been actually altered by the High Court, with the directions to the government to file the counter and permission to the petitioner to pay the tax, as claimed by him. It is high time that this particular aspect is now really taken to the head. This has been going on right from service tax days in an unconstitutional manner. This has been continued. Whatever may be the considerations, practical, financial, revenue implications, whatever may be, Constitution does not seem to be permitting the tax even in an indirect manner beyond on the value of the land, whatever may be the value of the land, whatever may be the quantum or percentage. Constitution as of now does not permit that. And in this view of the matter, the very para 5B of Schedule 2, which considers the constructions, the construction of the complex as the supply of service, provided, the entire consideration is not received after CC or first occupancy. That particular, here the very legislative competence of the 5B comes into play. There cannot be any mandatory levy of tax on immovable property, whatever may be the scope of serial number 3, which is inserted by notification 3 by 2019 in any manner whatsoever. And as I said, the observations of Supreme Court in L&T case also would come into play here. And there are various counts on which all these new entries with para 2, because para 2 prescribe for the 1/3 deduction, para 2 of the, which has been inserted in notification, prescribe for the 1/3 deduction, it is susceptible to serious constitutional challenges on the various counts. That challenge has already been mounted, thank God. The friend here, I will take the slide a pause, and I would like to say one thing. The question here, indirect tax is a very complex field. It is a very intricate field, and litigation can definitely be extremely costly affair, time-wise, energy-wise, and money-wise. But where it is not avoidable, one should and one cannot really avoid it. One should not even avoid it. In the name of beneficial, the measures, in the name of beneficial piece of legislations, in the name of benefits being extended to the sectors, not only real estate and others, or to the taxpayers, we have been helplessly watching in last 4 years the aberration, I would not call it even aberration, the complete transgressing of the powers vested in the authorities. It is not simply irregular. It is, at times, it is absolutely illegal in the manner in which the whole measures are being announced. Whether concessional rate, whether conditions, whether payment facility, the law has been actually, and nobody complains because people feel that it is for their own benefit. Even I would go to the extent of saying that even the extension of the time limit for furnishing the returns, or even the waiver of the late fees, there is a complete transgression of the powers. It is being done in such an arbitrary and haphazard manner that really one would feel really aghast. And one can't allow these type of liberties in the ground that ultimately they are benefiting us. No? Why should we really bother? Because it will hit the taxpayers, it will never hit the revenue. One classic case is the acceptance of the service tax liability right from 2004 under the construction service, construction of commercial complex and construction of the residential complex. Nobody really raised their head at that time that how can this entry relates to only service, whereas construction is a worse contract involving the transfer of property in goods also. And these entries only relate to the service only, pure service, only contractors can be made liable to. But everybody accepted that, and then ultimately it took Supreme Court after about 10 years to say that between 2004 and 2007, there was no levy. The issue is the deduction of the 1/3 amount of land also is another pointer in this direction. The other two aspects, one, the provision is beneficial to me, okay, fine, let me go ahead with it. Two, I will get the credit, right, ITC. Somebody is charging me tax wrongly, I will get the credit. Let me go ahead with the life. Three, I can recover the tax from the customer. Then why should I bother whether I'm charging, whatever is actually being charged and collected from me, whether it is constitutional or not. I can collect it from the customer. Why? Okay, fine, then I'm happy. Third, and the fourth is the most prominent phase, the phrase in our country amongst the taxpayers, whether in the direct tax or indirect tax, and that is, I did this to buy the peace. This is the most horrible piece which is influencing everybody's mind. Buying the peace. You never buy the peace. You only buy the troubles. You never, ever buy the peace. And I need not say that. As a professional, I need not even give you the examples because I know more than often, you may not agree, friends, I'm sorry, but more than often, you will be at the receiving end of your actually initiative for buying the peace. And it is really high time to come out of this really mental block. What Bhagavad Gita says is a abhisandan, the conditioned mind. This conditioned mind has really influenced our entire thought process for years and years, as I can see this. So please remove, yes, you take up, what would be the final? There are options, there are legal issues. I don't say that every time you be up in arms with the department or the revenue. I'm not actually suggesting that at all. but there cannot be a surrendering or submissive mentality while interpreting and implementing the legal provisions. One has to take an informed decision based on the legal provisions, interpretation, and the options available. Everybody has accepted that 1% and 5% mandatory because we have closed our mind. Okay, can there be another option to pay the tax, take the full ITC and claim the actual value of the land deduction? Whether I implement it or not as a builder developer, that's a different matter. But I am not closing my mind to that option. I'm examining it vis-a-vis my current option, so-called mandatory option. This is what actually I am trying to say there. And unless this is actually, some beginning is made in this direction, our entire thought process is really actually channelized in a much more, the probably open manner. We might not ever come out of these disputes. And at the end of the day, the professional will continue to laugh on their way to the bank.